Hey guys, it is December 16th, 2017, and this is Kyle, aka Vulcan Wolverine. So basically, it's Saturday morning where I am, December 16th. And I wanted to go over some Cuban embassy attack articles talking about kind of Cuba's reaction to the U.S. claims that diplomats, the 24 State Department workers, were attacked with sonic weapons or something like that. The investigation continues. And as a target individual in the United States of America, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of editorial as much as I can, because I'm being attacked heavily and tortured heavily here in the United States. But I kind of wanted to put some pieces, fit some more pieces together, connect some more dots about what happened in Cuba and how it's happening to people all over the world. Many of these articles state that, citizens in Canada have reported the same kind of effects from external stimuluses, external weapons, just as the State Department workers did, and many people in America. But the whole Cuba's claims about it, and Washington's investigation. It's kind of a circus right now. With this article, this was in, I think, the beginning of November. It was actually the end of October, October 27th, in the Guardian. I think it was October 25th. Science fiction, Cuban officials dismiss claims of sonic attack on U.S. diplomats. Washington accused of slander and refusing to cooperate with Cuban inquiry into mysterious incident that sickened American diplomats. And when I get to a part where I think I need to editorialize and kind of, insert an American targeted individual's perspective, like many of the people who watch my videos, I will do so. Cuban officials, and this is a picture of Colonel Ramiro Ramirez of the Cuban Interior Ministry. He's leading the investigation. The inquiry has yet to uncover evidence to support U.S. allegations, which would be hard because with all the testimonies all over the world of targeted individuals, it's hard to get. We do have proof of of high microwave, non-ionizing microwave radiation reading levels, high EMF levels, evidence of gang stalking, evidence of those things. But these, when you experience these directed energy weapons, the target is the only one who experiences them. The target is the only one who experiences the high-pitched noise to their ears and their head. The only one to experience the headaches. But let me go ahead and read. So it's very hard to just to show just concrete evidence because the weapons are deadly and silent, silent to those around, but very horrific and feel horrific and intense to the person targeted. Cuban officials investigating U.S. complaints of mysterious incidents that sickened American diplomats in Havana have described allegations of sonic attacks as science fiction and accused Washington of slander in refusing to cooperate fully with Cuba's inquiry. Donald Trump said last week he believed Havana was responsible for 24 diplomats being harmed. Washington expelled 15 Cuban diplomats and recalled more than half the U.S. diplomatic personnel from Havana earlier in October. While Cuban announced the expulsions as unjustified and accused the United States of insufficient cooperation, 3 Interior Ministry officials and a doctor heading the inquiry proved more details in an interview in Havana. Cuba has deployed about 2,000 security officials and experts, from criminologists to audiologists and mathematicians, to investigate the incidents after they became aware of them in February, the investigators said. The investigation has not ended, but so far has failed to uncover any evidence to corroborate allegations of attacks that the United States says has caused hearing loss, dizziness, fatigue, and cognitive issues for diplomatic personnel who are based on the communist-run island. This is slander by the United States, said Colonel Ramiro Ramirez, responsible for the security of diplomats in Cuba. Asked to respond to the Cuban officials' assertions, the State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said the United States had reminded Cuba of its obligation to ensure the safety of U.S. diplomatic personnel and was continuing its investigation of the attacks. Washington officials have raised the possibility that sonic weapons were used to harm the diplomats, according to U.S. media reports. However, Cuban investigators denied such weapons could even have been used by third parties without affecting the health of others or attracting attention. Now, the Cuban investigators' claims are not founded in reality when you're talking about directed energy weapon systems, because I've been sitting right by my dad one time, when I told him what was going on in my house that burnt down, and he was sitting right by me, and I was getting the high-pitched sound, the headaches, the hits to the head, and he was sitting right by me, not experiencing any of it. So the attacks, when you're targeted by weapons of this kind, it's directly and uniquely targeted to the individual who's receiving the directed energy hits on the body, and the high-pitched tinnitus sound, the headaches, and things like that caused by non-ionizing microwave radiation or electromagnetic frequencies. But they're trying to, what Cuba is trying to do is it's trying to say, well, if it was sonic weapons, it would have had to have been this huge device, and the sonic weapons would have been heard by everybody around them, and it would have been an audible loud sound. It would have been an audible loud sound because obviously a weapon would have to do that. But these weapons are very silent to those around. The high-pitched sound to the ears of a target individual is not produced. It's produced by electromagnetic radiation, and not actually just by a big blast of sound. It is considered extremely low-frequency sound or extremely high-frequency sound, but it's targeted. It's targeted so specially to the target that others around don't experience it. It's impossible. We are talking about science fiction, said Lieutenant Colonel Jose Alazo, an expert in the Criminal Investigation Unit of the Interior Ministry. From a technical point of view, that argument is unsustainable. So they're just saying, Cuba is saying it's science fiction. All the things that these 24 State Department workers were experiencing, it's science fiction because their neighbors weren't hearing it and people around them weren't hearing it. People around them, in their families, actually a lot of these 24 State Department workers' families did experience symptoms because they too were directly targeted. But if somebody wants to target you with these directed energy weapon systems, they can make it so that you only experience the effects of them and nobody around you does. That's why they're so dangerous. And that's why, it's hard to investigate these things. Newer techniques are coming out. We are making ground in that area, but that's why it's so hard to just show fast, concrete evidence, like a bullet wound or something like that. The investigators said the United States had supplied 14 recordings of the sounds its victims heard during the attacks and recorded, for example, on cell phones. These, however, did not contain anything that could damage human health, they concluded. The noises included the usual suburban sounds such as traffic, footsteps, and voices. They were also characterized by a deviation peak of 7 kHz in the frequency band of 3 kHz, similar to the song of a cricket. An audible sound would need to be very loud, above 80 decibels or akin to a plane's engine, to have a health impact, they said. Yet only the victims heard the noise, not their families living in the same houses or their neighbors. And a lot of the State Department workers' families did actually have effects from these weapons. So that is incorrect. And also, once again, they're talking about creating a loud enough sound, as a sonic weapon. But when you're looking on the electromagnetic spectrum, which these directed energy weapons use, you see a lot of extremely low frequency sounds that can be aimed at the head, extremely high frequency sounds that can be aimed at the head, that no one would hear. It would hurt you. It would create damage. It would create ringing, like in the nerves of your ear. But it wouldn't be heard around. It wouldn't be that loud. I'm not stating all of this exactly correctly, super correctly, because my head is, I mean, I'm having a hard time thinking, but it is pretty complicated how non-ionizing microwave radiation can actually create a high, a high frequency, high pitched sound like that in somebody's head, basically. I mean, they're shooting V2K at my head, so I hear audible voices. So you think about that, and nobody around me can hear the V2K except me. So they're basically targeting the audible center of the brain with electromagnetic frequencies, so that your ears hear the sound. But since your brain is receiving it, it's not your ears. It's not a sound that anybody around you would hear, because it's specifically for an area of your brain, the auditory cortex, and then it's going down to your ear nerves, so that it bypasses the outer part of your ear. We interviewed more than 300 people in the neighborhood. We also evaluated more than 30 medically, and no one heard these things, Alonzo said. I mean, asking people in the neighborhood who live by them is ridiculous, with the capability to, triangulate and hit with these directed energy weapon systems so concisely the target. It's just ridiculous that, and that's why they're using them this way. They're using them covertly, because if you do want to target somebody in a neighborhood, they're just going to hear it. And unless you intentionally target their family's not going to hear it, even in the same house. And that's why, these weapons are being used so covertly. So, obviously the people in the neighborhood, in the houses around, wouldn't hear the sonic attacks. And, sonic, sound is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, but in this article, they're really the Cuban government saying, "Oh, loud sound," like a sonic boom, like everybody hear it. But sound can present itself in a lot of different ways, and it can actually present itself as an electromagnetic frequency or microwave radiation. So we need to learn a lot more about how sonics present themselves. And it's not just some loud sound that would bust out a person's ears. Sometimes it's a high frequency sound or a low frequency sound that bypasses the ears completely. Electromagnetic frequency that goes to the auditory cortex and then creates a sound that flows down to the ears. So, I mean, this is sounds like science fiction, but it's just a new technology. It's using electromagnetic frequencies in different ways, and then aiming them at the human brain and nervous system, and actually ears too, to do different things than we've really thought of before. Now people are becoming more familiar with it. Even if the U.S. diplomats' reports of loud sounds were misleading, and the source of the attacks was infra or ultrasonic, and therefore inaudible to human ears, it would be hard to explain how it could go undetected, the Cuban investigator said. Well, I mean, the State Department workers would have had to have, EMF detection devices, and showed the high level of EMF, non-ionizing microwave radiation, which I'm sure they did. I'm sure that is in evidence. I'm sure some of them actually figured it out. When that's going to come out, that evidence, I don't know. That is good. That paragraph is good that they said that, because that's kind of what we're dealing with a lot of these directed energy weapon attacks. Even if the U.S. diplomats' reports of loud sounds were misleading and the source of the attacks was infra or ultrasonic and therefore inaudible to human ears, it would be hard to explain how it could go undetected. And that's not true, because that can be detected in many, many different ways. You would need a source that could be seen from a satellite. It would be enormous, said Dr. Manuel Villar, an ear, nose, and throat specialist. That's ridiculous. That is actually the most ridiculous quote that I've heard in any article, much less just the articles about the Cuban embassy attack. The source would not need to be seen from a satellite. It wouldn't have to be a humongous